Well, happy Memorial Day weekend. I hope you're doing well. I hope you've already had some downtime, and I hope you have some coming up. But you should barbecue tomorrow, sit by somebody's pool. Doesn't have to be your own. Just enjoy the weekend, enjoy the downtime. I'm so glad that you get a chance to take a break. I hope it's a great weekend for you. And I wanted to let you know before we dive in today, in 2 weeks, we're starting a brand new series called Lost Privileges. And you're like, well, what does that mean? What is that for? It is for anybody that has ever felt like they're up against it, whether it feels like their school or their work or their family or whatever situation, even their faith situation, whatever it might be, where they feel like there's just a lot of opposition. There's just a lot of stuff coming against me. How do I deal with it when it feels like everything is against me and I've lost all of my privileges? We're going to spend several weeks this summer in the book of Daniel talking about that. So I hope you'll be here. I hope you'll bring somebody with you as we talk about what you do and how you can actually thrive even when it feels like things aren't going so well. But today, we're going to continue with our series called Young, Restless, or Both. And we're talking about something that kind of hits almost everybody sooner or later in one way or another, and it's the world of work. And actually today, the title is so straightforward. Is work working? You know, and so many of us, that kind of really does define our life, doesn't it? How are things going at work has a huge impact on how things are going with you. Now, if you've been around just a little while, you don't have to have been in the world of work for very long. Things are very different than they were 3 or 4 years ago, right? Because it wasn't that long ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and you probably remember this, everybody wanted a side hustle, right? Everybody wanted some kind of job on the side because I got to make a little extra, I got to do a little more, I want some other things, I want some other money coming in because I got other stuff that I want to do. I had a really good friend that got hired as a security guard for the weekend. He had his regular job, you know, his Monday through Friday and his regular job, and he was making good money, but he wanted to do some other things with his family, and so he got hired on as a security guard on the weekends. And when they hired him on, they brought him in and they said, all you have to do is watch The Office on the weekends. He's like, okay. And so a few days, few weeks, months went by. I kind of checked in with him. I'm like, hey, how's that side hustle thing going? He goes, pretty good. He goes, I'm on season 6 of The Office, but I don't really know what it has to do with security. So come on, it's the weekend. You can be my friend. All right, yeah. I even had a chance for a side hustle. I go to a gym on a regular basis, and as I was going to the gym one day, the lady behind the desk said, hey, do you got a minute? I said, yeah, sure. She goes, would you be interested in making a little extra money? I said, sure. What do you need? She said, we're looking for a fitness model. And I was like, oh, yeah. And then she said, for before pictures. I'm like, Everybody was fanatic about making extra money. That was just kind of like what everybody was trying to do, is make some extra money. We had this whole side hustle going. And now it seems like we kind of entered this season where it was more no hustle, right? You know, I mean, everybody went home, everything was shut down for a while, and something happened, something changed. Like our attitudes about work and going to work and everything, and it's starting to get a little bit better, and I'll be honest with you, I'm be curious to see if things change yet again when this recession comes, if things are gonna be different one more time. But there was a season there where almost every store you went into, every place you went had up a sign, right? Now hiring, we're short-staffed, please be patient with us. We can't find enough workers and all this stuff, and people paying crazy amounts of money for work that used to be just basic minimum wage stuff. And it was like nobody really wanted to work. And then for a lot of folks, they were working at home. And some of you love that, which I totally understand. But some of you kind of also hit this wall where it's like, I'm always at home and I'm always at work. And so I'm always at work and I'm always at home. And it's like, something's got to change. I can't keep doing this. And we entered what people called the Great Resignation. And it was a season, and I think we're coming out of it, but it was a season where people basically said no to working. We used to be fanatic about having extra money. Now we're a little bit fanatic about having some extra time. We don't want to work like we were before. And I think, perfect example of this, I read an article kind of getting ready for today, and I read an article about a guy that called in. He's 25, 26 years old. He did what he was supposed to do. He went to college, he got a degree in business, he got on a corporation, he worked really hard, worked a lot of hours, was getting promoted, was moving right along. And he calls into this radio show because they were talking about work and everything. And they're like, so what's your situation? What are you doing now? He goes, well, I had this corporate job. He goes, I was 26, I was making 6 figures already, and my future was all mapped out for me, but I quit. Really? Why did you do that? He said, I just couldn't do it anymore. I was doing stuff I didn't care about and things I didn't want to do. And he said, well, are you working now? What are you doing? He goes, yeah, I work on a farm. He goes, and I love it. It's the best decision I ever made. I walked away from that because if I was going to do something that was going to cost me so much, I wanted to make sure I was doing something I really loved and really enjoyed. And I think for a lot of people, that's the mindset. Now, when it comes to work, it needs to matter. It needs to be something I can enjoy. It needs to be meaningful. I can't just go through the motions. But even with that, we're all over the board, right? I mean, some people are still on the whole, I want to retire early. Like they're doing everything they can, make all the money they can, and they want to retire at 40. Other people, they want to work past retirement age. And I'm sure you know people that love their job, and you know people that hate their job. I mean, it is all over the board. In just a minute, we're going to look at a guy who was incredibly successful, incredibly wealthy, and he worked really hard, and he didn't like that, so he retired early. And then when he retired early, he hated that too, right? I mean, it's just, there's something about this that's very tempting and at the same time very tricky for a lot of us. So I don't know what you think of when you think of work, because it's so different now. I mean, you might think of the job you have or the job that you want, or you think of all the jobs you used to do or whatever your situation, or maybe many of you don't just work from home, you work at home. I mean, you're taking care of a house and taking care of kids, and you're doing more work for more hours and less pay than most of us. And so work means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But here's one thing I do know. This is true no matter what, and this is true of you, and it's true of everybody else you know. Nobody is going to work long-term and invest everything they have in something that they feel like doesn't have meaning. People just won't do it. They just won't do it anymore. No matter how much money you pay them, no matter how many opportunities and benefits and everything else, at the end of the day, if it feels like it doesn't matter, people won't keep doing it. So here is the big takeaway today as we get ready to dive in. Here's the big takeaway. There is a secret to making your work meaningful. And it may not be what you think it is. Working like it matters is what makes your work matter. Working like it matters, the way you do your work, is what makes your work meaningful and what makes it matter. Now, we're not the first ones to struggle with this. As a matter of fact, a little over 3,500 years ago, a man wrote down some thoughts about work and what it meant to him and how he struggled with it. He openly struggled with it. His name was Solomon. And if you've got a Bible or you want to follow along on our app, we're going to be in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 2. And we'll jump in there in just a second. But I want to kind of give you a little background about Solomon. You know, scholars and historians say he was the richest guy on the planet during his time. And this isn't just the Bible. I mean, this is people from historical accounts and records and everything else. They all pretty much agree, yeah, this guy was the richest guy. I mean, if you took Bezos and Gates and whoever else has got a lot of money and put them all together, Elon Musk, put them all together, you're starting to get close to what this guy's wealth looked like. I mean, he was phenomenally, fantastically rich. And the Bible also says that he was the wisest man to ever live. Which makes sense. I mean, you got to have something going on to make all that money. It can't all be luck, right? I mean, you got to be smart. You got to know some things. And Solomon had made and amassed this huge fortune. But the book of Ecclesiastes is his own personal struggle, is his own detail. It's almost like his own journal. You kind of get to see into his mind and his heart about this struggle, this lifelong struggle that he had for trying to find happiness. What pretty much all of us want. The thing that he was trying to find, that it was such a struggle for him. And you would think, you're kind of like, well, it's hard to feel sorry for him, right? I mean, you're the richest guy in the world. And he tried everything, right? He tried food, he tried women, he tried projects, he tried accomplishments. He obviously tried wealth. He tried all of this stuff. And so on one hand, this is just me, it's a little hard to listen to him complain, right? It's like, I wouldn't mind trying to be happy the way you were forced to try to be happy, right? But he stumbles on something incredibly insightful. And so in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 17, he's going to kind of give us two versions of the same thing. And the first one is pretty negative, I'll be honest with you. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 17. So I hated life. He starts off right out of the gate, right? I hated life because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish. Yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. In other words, he said, look, all the stuff I've earned, all the stuff I've done, all the money I've made, sooner or later, it's just going to somebody else. Because I'm going to die and I'm not going to have any control over it. And he's pretty bummed out about this. And look at verse 20, he continues on. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. What do people get for all the toil and anxious striving with which they labor under the sun? All their days, their work is grief and pain. Even at night, their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless. Well, he's pretty cheery, right? But some of you are like, he just described my job, right? Like all the anxiety and all the pain and all the struggle and all the stuff. And I work all day and it's frustrating and it takes so much from me. And then at night, I can't even sleep because it keeps buzzing and spinning. And I just, Solomon uncovered something. When we work, and it depends on why we work. And what Solomon just described is working for self. When we are working for ourselves, you noticed how many times he said, all of my stuff, all of my things, all of my deal, all of my work, all of my money that somebody else is gonna get. He's in essence saying, when we are working for self, it doesn't work out. When our motivation, when our heart is to work for me to have more, to get more, to do more, to feel better, and all these other things, it just doesn't work. It's a disaster, actually. I mean, to be frank, I mean, he sounds very depressed, but a lot of us have felt that, haven't we? I mean, I don't want to speak for you. I mean, maybe every job you've ever been in, you've loved, and you have just been in the perfect place the whole time, and that's fantastic. I'm happy for you. But for a lot of folks, that's not the story. He has had a job that has literally taken the life out of him, which is crazy because he was the king. He got to choose his job, right? I mean, he didn't have to do anything he didn't want to. But it ruined him because of the way he went about it. He was working for himself, and it ruined him. He has some more insight. He kind of gives the positive side of it. If you go on to verse 24, look at verse 24. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too I see is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This, too, is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. In essence, he said something really important here. He said that you are wired to contribute. That you're wired to contribute, and that in a way, work is actually a gift. And some of you, depending on your job or your situation, you'll be like, that's not true. You know? But it is. It is. God gave us a gift. Now, here's where the problem comes. Now, watch this. This is so powerful, but it's so easy to miss. When we try to get the wrong thing from work, when we try to get our identity, when we try to get validated, when we try to get, just the materialism of, I just want to build up more stuff. When we try to prove ourselves, when we try to find who we are and what we do, in essence, we ruin the gift. You see, it's amazing because God gives us this gift of work to contribute, because every single one of you has within you a desire to do something meaningful, to contribute somehow. But when you try to get something out of the gift that's not there, something incredible happens. You ruin the gift, and then the gift ruins you. You ruin the gift. When you try to get more from it than it can give, you ruin the gift. And then the gift that God gave you to contribute, this desire, this hunger, it ruins you. And this is what happens, again, when we're working for self. And you might say, well, if I'm gonna work for self, who am I supposed to work for? I mean, I wanna be happy. I wanna have a great job. I wanna make good money. I wanna be able to do the things I wanna do. And you're saying that is gonna ruin the gift that God gave me? You think about it this way. Adam Grant is a workplace psychologist, and he's got fancy titles and all this other stuff. But basically, his job is to understand, why do people do what they do, and why do they work the way that they work? And he did something which, it was one of those, to me, it was kind of a duh statement, but they did all these interviews and did all this massive study and interviewed all these people and, got all these PhDs together, and they came up with this incredibly, to me, obvious statement that when you make happiness the goal of work, you will miss it. When you make contributing the goal of your work, you will find happiness as a byproduct. Like if you will set your sights on contributing, you'll end up being happy. If you set your sights on being happy, you'll end up being miserable. Because ultimately, you can't work for self. The way I would say it is this: enjoying things is a gift from God. That's what Solomon finally landed on. There's so many things that God gives you. And he talks about them. He goes to eat and drink and enjoy your family, enjoy your work, enjoy the contribution you're making. All this stuff is there for you. Enjoying things is a gift from God. But enjoying life, it only comes from walking with God. You can't get it any other way. I mean, it's fantastic to get promoted. It is wonderful to crush your competition. It is great to build up this huge portfolio because of all the success that you've had. But it can't bring you life. It can't give you the thing that everybody's looking for. It only comes in one way. And so while Solomon would tell you, hey, working for self, that's a failed track. But working to serve, that's a sweet spot. Working to serve other people, that is where things start to come together. So I want to share one other passage with you. It's in Colossians chapter 3. And this is one of those passages in the Bible that it kind of encompasses everything. It's one of those, boy, if I could just live this out, if I could just make this true of my life would make so much sense. And if I could summarize the passage, what is Paul saying? He's saying when it comes to work, working to serve is where things are best fit for you. Colossians chapter 3, verse 15. He says this, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. Since as members of one body, you were called to peace, and be thankful. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. You're like, what does it have to do with work? Verse 17, whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Now, skip down to verse 22, a little further down in that chapter. Slaves, obey your earthly master in everything, and do it not only when their eye is on you and to curry their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. Whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward, it is the Lord Christ you are serving. And anyone who does wrong will be repaid for their wrongs, and there is no favoritism. Now, this is, like I said, one of those passages that it kind of summarizes everything. And I got to be honest with you. If you're a follower of Jesus, this makes so much sense. If you're not a follower of Jesus, you hear this and you're kind of like, what, do you just try hard? Is that basically what you're saying? Just kind of give it your best. And I could have gotten that anywhere. It's so different when you have a different leader in your life than yourself. And we've talked about this several times over this series, but I'm going to bring it up again because it fits so well right here. In essence, Paul is saying, when you go to work, whatever your work is, wherever it is, whether it's logging on, driving into an office, whatever it looks like, when you go to work, in essence, he's saying, go as a representative of Jesus. Now, you're like, well, I don't like my job. Well, I don't like the people I work with. Well, I don't really like the things that I do. Paul says, whatever you do, wherever you go as a representative of Jesus. Now, I don't know if you've thought about this, especially again, like say if you're a follower of Jesus. When you walk into your office, when you log on to your computer, when you go wherever it is you're going and you're representing your company, the reality is that is the small definition of what you're doing. The big definition of what you're doing is you represent Christ. You represent Christ to the people that are there, and you represent Christ in the way you do your work. I mean, that's why as followers of Jesus, we should never mail it in. We should never do a poor job. It's not because we're just, really concerned about having a good work ethic. It's because I represent Christ, and I don't want people to think poorly of Jesus because of the way I do my work. And so we represent him. But let me make it just a little bit finer application for you. When you learn this little principle that I want to share with you, I don't care what your job is. It takes it from wherever it is and it makes it much more meaningful. When you begin to link this idea that I represent Jesus with the fact that God is at work in me and in the lives of the people I work with, that my job is to represent Jesus and help bring people back to God. When I start to see my work that way, all of a sudden the value of my work goes way up. I'm not just making widgets or punching numbers in a spreadsheet or making sales calls. What I am doing is trying to bring people back to God, and I am connecting my work to God's kingdom. And all of a sudden, this is incredibly valuable. This is very meaningful. Even if the job that I do or the task that I'm doing, I mean, you might be working as a barista. You may be doing something where you're like, I'm just putting drinks in a cup. I mean, what's, no. You are bringing people back to God and you are representing Jesus. Because in whatever you do it all for the glory of God. If you make that connection, it changes everything. And you might say, yeah, but you don't know my boss. You don't know where I work. I mean, you don't know what my job is. And you're right, I don't. But I do know this. Paul extended this even to slaves. That's so foreign to our concept. We have no idea of what that is, that I have to do something whether I want to or not. I don't have any control. Somebody else owns me, and they could literally whip me or even have me killed if I refuse. I mean, none of us work in that kind of environment. And he says, even if you happen to be a slave, work for your master as if you are working for Christ. I mean, he elevates it and he takes it out of just this, yeah, but. And he says, no. You work as if you represent Christ, no matter what you do. And so here's what I want you to do today. I want you to make a trade. I want you to trade, how did I get here? For I know why I'm here. How did I get to this job? Or I don't even like this job. I don't even want to be here. How did I get here? To, I know why I am here. Now, having said that, I am not a career counselor, okay? I can't tell you if you should stay in your job or not. I can't tell you if you're in the right place. That's stuff you got to figure out. But here's one thing I do know. If you keep going to work representing Jesus and you keep doing your work as though you're working for him, God is going to bless you and God is going to use you and you are going to have meaningful work to do. But what I would tell you is this. If you have a constant feeling that I'm in the wrong place, this is not the right job, this is not the right thing, then you need to get ready because God is probably getting ready to move you. And it may be to something similar, it may be the same kind of work in a different place, or it may be something completely different. But you need to pay attention to that. Now, there's a couple of things that God tells us about our work that I wish I had known when I was younger. I wish I had understood this and figured this out, but I didn't. But the first one is straightforward, is you need to filter your work. You need to filter your work. The work you're doing, the job that you have, you need to filter it. Because here's the one thing I hear a lot of times, especially from younger adults or from people that have kind of hit that point where, I did this for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years and I got to do something else. I can't do it anymore. I got to completely reboot my career and do something else. And here's the thing I hear all the time. I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do with the rest of my life. Whether that's 40 years of work or whether that's just the last segment of work or whatever it is, what am I supposed to do with the rest of my life? You need to filter your work, and you know the answer to that. You might think you don't. You're like, well, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. Yes, you do. And it comes from answering 3 very basic questions, 3 simple questions. Anybody can answer them, but they will give you definition into, am I in the right place, or do I need to look at something else? Number 1, who are the people that I want to help? I mean, I don't mean kind of the nice thing, and I saw the commercial on TV, and I felt bad for the dogs or for the kids or for the whatever, and I sent them some money. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about who are the people, when I look around, I say, man, if there was one thing I could do, if there was any way I could help, I would help them. Who are them? Who are them for you? It's probably gonna be different than anybody else's answer, but who are them? Who are the people that you wanna help? Second question, what are the problems you wanna solve for them? Whoever them are, what are the problems that they face? What is the struggle that they have that you want to try to help bring an answer to? And then the third thing, because chances are somebody else has already started working on this, you don't have to come up with every solution. What are the solutions that get you excited? So who are the people? What are the problems they struggle with? And then what are the solutions that you're interested in? As you start to narrow in on that, it's still very broad, but it starts to give you an idea of what your work and your career and the meaningful work you want to do should look like. But then it's time to get specific because I've told you this several times, but God created you with a drive to contribute. It is in you. You have a drive to contribute. As a matter of fact, if you're a follower of Jesus, the Bible tells us he created us to do good works. We are supposed to do stuff that matters. We are supposed to do things that make a difference. That is who we are. That's how God made us. So you've started off with this idea of who and what are the solutions. But here's where it gets really personal. What are your talents? What talents did God give you? What abilities has he given to you? Again, as a follower of Jesus, what spiritual gifts do you have? And as you start to think about the passions that God has placed in your life, and you start to think about the people that you want to help, all of a sudden you start to see, hey, there's a huge area where this all works together, where this all applies. You gotta get off the idea that there's just one right job out there, that there's just one thing out there, that's the perfect fit for me and that's the only thing I can ever do. That's not true. You're gonna have hundreds of jobs and dozens of jobs throughout your life. So get off the idea that there's only one job for me. But where do those things start to come together? People I wanna help, the problems I wanna solve, the passion that God's given me, where do those things start to merge together? Because wherever that is, that's your answer. That's where your future lies. That's what God has for you. Because he created you, like I said, with a drive to contribute. He created you to do good works. When I was 23, I worked for a pretty large bank, and I had actually been there 7 or 8 years. They had been bought and taken over by different banks a couple of times, and I had kind of survived. And I went to college. I got a degree in finance, and I was working there, and I was kind of moving up quickly. And at the time, I thought it was because I was so great. Later, I realized it was because I was so cheap compared to everybody else. Right? I mean, I'd like to think it was me, but it was the fact that they could pay me a whole lot less than they could pay grown-ups. But anyway, I was working at this bank, and they hit another reorganization. And that's a fancy way of saying we're getting rid of a bunch of people, right? And I remember when they came to our floor and they kind of announced it. And, I was new to all this. I was pretty naive, so I'm just listening, kind of nodding, and I'm like, okay, so they're reorganizing. What difference does that make? What's the big deal? Do I just sit over here now or what, And finally they said, so today is the last day that this department exists. They said, we're sorry, it's nothing personal, it's just a management decision. And I was just kind of, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. How does that? I mean, it felt really personal because personally I had a job and now personally I don't have a job, right? I mean, it just kind of floored me. And it was on a Friday, of course, near the end of the day so that everybody has to get out, and you can't tear anything up. And so we all go home and I tell my wife, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I was waiting for more directions. You know what I mean? I'd never been fired. I'd never been laid off. I was kind of waiting, like, surely they're going to tell me more stuff, like later, right? And finally, my old boss called me on Monday, middle of the day, and he said, he goes, hey, there's an opening if you want it. He said, I've been trying to get you a spot, and you have to apply for it. You'll have to go in an interview, and he tells me all about the job. And as he was telling me about it, I thought to myself, I'm not any good at that. I'm gonna hate that. But I didn't know what else to do. So I called and I set up the interview the next day and they hired me on the spot. Again, I'd like to think it was because I was so great. And again, in retrospect, it's because I was so cheap, right? so they brought me in. It cost me 6 months of a horrible work life. Every day going in feeling like I don't wanna be here. I don't want to do this. I don't like what we're doing. I don't think the people here like me. It's just not working. This is awful. And I got a taste of what I know a lot of people feel all the time of going into a job you hate to do something you don't want to do with people that you don't even know if they like you, but you have to because you want to make the money, right? And it taught me something. I need to filter my work because I cannot allow the fear to be in charge. God is in charge of my career, not my fear. Right? God is the one who's in charge. I let my fear force me to take a job I didn't want to take, to do something I didn't want to do, so that I could make some money because I didn't trust God to come through for me. I've got to filter my work. He's going to take care of the spot and the time and the money and all the stuff. I've got to filter it and make sure I'm following him. So filter your work. Second thing, just last thing actually, you need to work today like it matters. Work today like it matters. And really what I'm getting after here is gratitude. I don't know what your job is. I don't know how long you've had it. I do know this. There was a time, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, a decade ago, where you would have been over the moon to get that job. This is my dream. Oh man, if I could just get this job, I'd be so happy. I'd be so excited. This is the job I really want. I know this is the right place for me. You were so excited about it. And I get it, things happen, stuff changes, and life and the world and all of that. But when you bring gratitude to your job, it changes everything. It changes the way you represent Christ. It changes the way people encounter you. It changes the opportunities you have to bring people back to God. And it changes the opportunities you have to do work that matters and to go home at the end of the day feeling like today was a good day. Today was a day that mattered. I don't know how to express this any better than this. What you do matters when you do it in a way that matters. That's really what it is. Because there's all kinds of jobs. You've had a bunch, you'll probably have some more. Maybe you're done, maybe you're retired, but even the things you involve yourself in, the way you volunteer, the way you help other people, are you doing it for self or are you doing it to serve? The way you do it is what makes it matter. What you do will constantly change. The way you do it is what makes a difference. I want to pray with you, but I want to do something a little bit different today. Normally we pray and we continue and we come up and worship, and we're going to do that. But I've heard from several folks just in this last week that work has actually been a real struggle because of some things that changed on them. If you've been paying attention, there's places, you knew about Buffalo, you learned about Uvalde, Texas the other day. If you pay a lot of attention, you know there's been some issues with religious leaders that have failed recently. There's just been a lot of ugly, hard, difficult things in the news. And that's just at the global level. We've still got a war in the Ukraine. We got all kinds of things going on. But I also know that for you, in your own world, your own life, your own situation, there's a lot of you that have been struggling through some things. And so what I want to do is I want to pray with you, but we're going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to pray and I'm just going to give you some space. I want to give you some time. I'm going to prompt you with a couple of ideas about things that you can talk to God about. Because as you've worshiped him, as he's spoken to you through his word, he's here. And I want you to experience his presence in your life as we pray together. So I want to prompt you. We're going to pray. You can pray quietly in your heart and in your mind. And then I'm going to close this out and we're going to continue to worship. But I want you to take this time to lay whatever is heavy, lay it down in front of God and ask him to walk with you and to work with you. Let's pray together.